The shuttle descended through Earth's atmosphere with barely a whisper. Ambassador watched through the viewport as blue oceans and green continents came into view. After 3,000 cycles of diplomatic service, first contacts had become routine. This one would be no different. The humans had finally cracked faster-than-light travel, and now they wanted to join the Galactic Confederation. Standard procedure required a threat assessment before membership could be granted. Its crystalline body refracted the sunlight into rainbow patterns across the shuttle's interior. The Vex were meticulous by nature and took pride in that fact. Every species had been properly measured and rated according to the Universal Threat Assessment Matrix. The system had maintained peace for 2,000 cycles. It worked because it was thorough, objective, and fair. The human delegation waited at the landing site. They wore formal clothing and held themselves with nervous dignity. Their leader, a woman named President, stepped forward with an outstretched hand. Had studied the gesture, physical contact as greeting, primitive but harmless. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador," President said. Her voice carried hope and excitement. "We're honored to begin this process." "The honor is mutual," replied through the translator device. "The Confederation welcomes all peaceful species. The assessment will take approximately 3 of your months. We will evaluate your capabilities across multiple categories to determine your placement within our organization." President smiled. "We're ready. Humanity has dreamed of this day for generations." The assessment began the following morning. A team of 12 specialists spread across the planet, gathering data with scientific precision. They measured bone density in volunteers from different ethnic groups. They tested muscle fiber composition, reaction times, and pain thresholds. They analyzed human technology, from their primitive fusion reactors to their barely functional FTL drives. They studied military capabilities, social structures, and historical records. The results disappointed everyone. Human bones were fragile compared to most spacefaring species. A warrior could shatter a human femur with casual pressure. Human skin offered almost no protection against environmental hazards. They had no natural armor, no venom, no ability to survive in vacuum even briefly. Their reaction times were adequate but unremarkable. Their strength-to-body weight ratio ranked in the bottom 20th percentile of known species. "They are remarkably delicate," specialists noted during the weekly briefing. "I witnessed one human trip on flat ground and break her arm. The injury required medical intervention and weeks of healing. How did they survive their own evolution?" "There is unusually hospitable," another specialist answered. "Abundant water, moderate temperatures, rich oxygen content. They adapted to paradise, essentially. No pressure to develop serious defensive capabilities." Reviewed the psychological assessments with growing concern. Humans were aggressive, yes, but their aggression seemed unfocused. They fought each other constantly over resources, ideologies, and ancient grievances. Their history was an endless cycle of warfare interrupted by brief periods of peace. They had nearly destroyed themselves with nuclear weapons just centuries ago. "Prone to self-destructive behavior," dictated into the report. "Limited impulse control, high emotional volatility. These traits suggest poor judgment under pressure." The technological assessment was only slightly more encouraging. Humans had developed artificial intelligence, genetic engineering, and nuclear fusion. But their FTL technology was crude, barely capable of reaching neighboring star systems. Their weapons were kinetic and explosive, nothing compared to the plasma cannons or molecular disruptors other species wielded. Their best warship could be disabled by a single Confederation patrol craft. One discovery particularly troubled. Humans required constant maintenance. They needed water every few days or they died. They needed food every few days or they died. They needed oxygen continuously or they died in minutes. They needed sleep, which left them vulnerable for a third of their lives. They needed specific temperature ranges, specific atmospheric pressure, specific everything. "They are the most high-maintenance species we have ever assessed," told the team. Their survival requirements are absurdly specific. Any deviation from optimal conditions causes rapid deterioration. I am genuinely puzzled how they survived long enough to develop. Perhaps intelligence compensated for physical inadequacy, specialists suggested. Their intelligence is moderate, replied. They are clever problem solvers but not exceptional. They have greater cognitive processing speed. They have superior memory retention. The Quinn demonstrate more advanced abstract reasoning. Humans are simply average. The 3 months concluded with a comprehensive evaluation meeting, assembled all the data and calculated the final threat rating according to the matrix. The number appeared on the display, 2.3 out of 10. President received the news in his temporary office. She sat across from the ambassador, her face carefully neutral. A 2.3, she repeated slowly. What does that mean exactly? It means humanity ranks as a low-threat species, explained gently. You will be granted Confederation membership, but you will be assigned to Resource Tier 4. Your role will primarily involve trade and cultural exchange. You will provide raw materials, artistic works, and perhaps agricultural products. But not security, said. Not exploration, not governance. Those roles require species with higher threat ratings, said. The provide military protection at 9.1. The handle deep space exploration at 8.4. The Vex and several other species manage governmental functions. Humanity's capabilities are better suited to support roles. His jaw tightened. We fought our way up from caves. We split the atom. We reached our moon with computers less powerful than our children's toys. We built artificial intelligence. We mapped our own genome. We created faster-than-light travel from nothing but mathematics and determination. All of which is commendable, said. But the threat assessment measures combat potential, physical durability, and strategic capability. By these metrics, humanity scores low. This is not an insult. The score 2.1, and they are valued members who provide essential biological resources. The score 2.7, and their art is treasured across the galaxy. Tier 4 species are vital to Confederation function. Just not important enough to protect, said quietly. Paused. The Confederation protects all member species according to strategic priorities and available resources. Tier 4 worlds receive standard defensive support. But if we were attacked by something serious, you would prioritize higher-tier worlds. That is the logical allocation of military assets, yes. She looked out the window at the city below, where millions of humans went about their lives, unaware that their species had just been officially classified as weak. When she turned back, her expression was hard. We accept membership, she said. We'll take our place in Resource Tier 4, but I want you to understand something, Ambassador. You measured us wrong. The assessment was thorough and objective, replied. I assure you, the methodology has been tested across hundreds of species. You measured us in peacetime, said. You saw us when we're comfortable and safe. You haven't seen what we become when we're not. Made a note of the comment but dismissed it as wounded pride. Every species thought themselves special. Every species believed the assessment had somehow missed their true potential. It was a natural psychological response to disappointing results. The delegation returned to Earth. Humanity joined the Confederation as a Tier 4 species. They established their first colony world within 2 years, naming it New Brisbane after an Earth city. A second colony followed, then a third. All 3 worlds focused on agriculture and resource extraction. Human merchants began trading with other species, offering Earth's music and visual arts. Some found the human cultural products interesting. Most found them quaint. 10 years passed quickly. Humanity settled into their role without significant complaint. They paid their Confederation dues, attended diplomatic functions, and slowly built a modest fleet of cargo ships. They seemed content with their limitations. Had moved on to other assignments, assessing new species and updating threat ratings for existing members. The Confederation was vast, and there was always work to be done. Thought about the humans occasionally, wondering if they had adjusted to their status, but mostly forgot about them. Then the distress call arrived. It came from the outer rim beyond Confederation space. Long-range sensors detected something massive moving through the void. Ships, thousands of them. They swept through a border system called Prime and left nothing behind. No survivors, no structures, no trace that 17 million had ever lived there. The Confederation Council convened in emergency session. Scout ships reported back with footage of the attackers. They called themselves the 8 feet tall, armored in natural chitin thick enough to stop standard plasma rounds. They moved in perfect coordination, thousands of individuals acting as a single organism, a hive mind. This is a threat-level event, the council chair announced. We are deploying immediate military response. The warrior caste will lead the defense. The siege forms will provide support. All border systems should prepare for possible evacuation. Study the tactical displays with growing unease. They were moving fast, consuming system after system. Their technology was crude, but their numbers were overwhelming. Most concerning was their adaptability. Each engagement showed them learning, evolving new tactics, developing biological countermeasures to Confederation weapons. The rated 9.1 on the threat scale engaged the system. They lasted 4 days before requesting emergency withdrawal. The rated 8.7 held their ground for 6 days before falling back with catastrophic losses. They kept coming. Check the projected path of the invasion fleet. The crystalline ambassador's light refraction stuttered, a Vex indication of distress. The fleet was heading directly toward the Terran sector. 3 human colony worlds lay in their path: New Brisbane, New Johannesburg, New Shanghai, combined population 12 million humans. The council reconvened. The discussion was brief and brutal. Confederation forces were stretched thin trying to defend Tier 1 and Tier 2 worlds. High-value systems required protection. Strategic resources had to be secured. Military assets could not be wasted on lost causes. We should send evacuation transport to the Terran colonies, one council member suggested. They will arrive in 17 days, another replied. We cannot evacuate 12 million individuals in that time frame, and if we commit transport ships to the attempt, we risk losing those vessels as well. Then what do we tell the humans? The council chair made the decision. We tell them the truth. We tell them we cannot help them. We tell them to evacuate if they can, but we will not be sending military support to defend Tier 4 worlds against a threat that has defeated our best warriors. Volunteered to deliver the message personally. It seemed the least the Confederation could do. The ambassador composed the communication carefully, trying to balance honesty with compassion. President's face appeared on the screen. She had aged in 10 years, her hair now gray, lines etched deep around her eyes. She listened to his explanation without interruption. "So you're abandoning us," she said when the ambassador finished. "We are making strategic decisions based on military reality," replied. "They have defeated our strongest defenders. Your colonies cannot withstand them. Evacuation is your only option." "How many ships can you send to help evacuate?" "I am sorry. We cannot spare transport vessels. Every ship is needed to defend priority systems." Was quiet for a long moment. Then she smiled. It was not a happy expression. "Do you remember what I told you 10 years ago, Ambassador? I said you measured us wrong. I said you saw us in peacetime." She leaned closer to the camera. "You're about to see what we are the rest of the time." The transmission ended. Stared at the blank screen, unsettled by the human's response. Should be panicking, should be begging for help, should be organizing desperate evacuation efforts. Instead, she seemed almost calm, almost ready. The ambassador pulled up Earth's communication channels, monitoring the broadcasts between the and the colonies. Military orders were being transmitted. Weapons were being distributed. Every human capable of holding a gun was being armed. They were not evacuating. They were preparing to fight. Ran the calculations again, checking for errors. The math was clear. They would land 800,000 warriors on New Brisbane. The human colony had 4 million civilians and perhaps 50,000 individuals with any military training. The warriors were individually superior in every measurable way. They had biological armor. They had greater strength. They moved with hive-mind coordination. The battle should last hours, perhaps a day if the humans fortified well. Then they would move to the next colony and the next, and 12 million humans would simply cease to exist. Filed the report and moved on to other duties. There was nothing else to be done. The humans had been warned. They had made their choice. The Confederation would mourn them and add their names to the list of species consumed by the. But 17 days later, when the first reports came back from New Brisbane, its crystalline structure flickered with confusion. The humans were still fighting. The fleet arrived at New Brisbane like a swarm of locusts blotting out the sun. 800,000 warriors descended in drop pods, crashing through the atmosphere with the certainty of inevitable victory. They had consumed 17 systems. They had broken the warrior caste. They had shattered the siege forms. These fragile humans, rated 2.3 on the threat assessment, would fall in hours. The first wave landed outside the colony's main city. Warriors emerged from their pods, each 1/8 feet of armored chitin and razor-sharp mandibles. They moved in perfect synchronization, a living tide of cutting edges and coordinated death. The hive mind directed them with flawless precision. They had done this before. They knew how to efficiently strip a world of all life. The humans opened fire from 300 positions simultaneously. They had not expected that. Most species met them in conventional defensive lines, trying to hold territory with superior firepower. The humans were everywhere and nowhere. They fired from buildings, from underground tunnels, from concealed positions in the forests outside the city. They used primitive kinetic weapons that should have been obsolete, but the bullets found gaps in the armor because the humans aimed for the joints, the eyes, the softer tissue between plates. The first wave took 12% casualties before reaching the city perimeter. That was unusual but not alarming. They adapted. The hive mind processed the human tactics and adjusted. Warriors began moving in formations, protecting each other's vulnerable points. They deployed biological shields, specialized drones that absorbed incoming fire. The humans changed tactics immediately. They stopped firing and disappeared. They advanced into empty streets. Buildings stood silent. No movement, no sound. The warriors spread out, searching for targets. The bombs went off in sequence. Entire city blocks exploded. Buildings collapsed on top of formations. Underground tunnels caved in, swallowing warriors by the hundreds. Fires spread through the rubble, and chemical accelerants made the flames burn hot enough to crack chitin armor. They pulled back, regrouped, and adapted again. They deployed biosensors to detect hidden explosives. They sent smaller scouting groups ahead of main forces. They learned. But so did the humans. The pattern repeated for days. They would develop a new tactic and push forward. The humans would fall back, change their approach, and strike from a new angle. The hive mind was efficient and logical, but it was centralized. One intelligence directing thousands of bodies. The humans fought as individuals who somehow still moved toward the same goal. Every squad made its own decisions. Every soldier adapted independently. They could not predict them because there was no single pattern to learn. A warrior was stronger than any human, faster, better armored, but humans did not fight fair. They used traps and ambushes. They poisoned water sources that scouts used. They set buildings to collapse at specific times, crushing warriors hours after humans had retreated. They fought at night when vision was weaker. They played sounds through speakers to confuse the hive mind's coordination signals. And they did not stop. A human soldier would take a wound that should have been incapacitating and keep fighting. A human squad would be reduced to 2 people and continue their mission. A human with a sucking chest wound would drag themselves to a detonator and blow up a supply depot. The hive mind could not comprehend it. These creatures were fragile. They died easily, but they refused to stay down. On day 7, an assault group cornered 40 human soldiers in a collapsed hospital. The warriors moved in for the kill. The humans detonated explosives that brought down the entire structure, killing themselves and 200 in the rubble. The hive mind registered confusion. That was not efficient. That was not rational. Why would prey destroy itself to wound the hunter? Because humans were not prey. They were pursuit predators who had forgotten how to give up. Ambassador watched the tactical reports with growing disbelief. New Brisbane should have fallen in hours. It had been 12 days and the humans were still fighting. They had taken 68% of the colony's territory, but every meter cost them warriors. The casualty ratio was in this favor, but not by enough. Not nearly enough. How are they doing this? Specialist asked, studying the same data. We measured them. We know their capabilities. This should not be possible. Had no answer. The threat assessment had been thorough. Humans were weak, fragile, physically inferior to the in every measurable category, but measurement had somehow missed something fundamental. On day 18, they tried a different approach. They deployed bioweapons, releasing airborne pathogens designed to kill oxygen-breathing species. The humans fell back into sealed bunkers. The thought they had won. They advanced through the contaminated zones to root out the survivors. The humans emerged wearing crude protective gear and attacked from behind. They had gone into the contaminated zones deliberately, using their own biological weapons as cover. They struck the supply lines and destroyed 3 landing zones before melting back into the ruins. Day 32. They controlled 85% of New Brisbane's surface. The human defenders had been reduced from 4 million to fewer than 300,000. By all logical assessment, the battle was over. They just needed to finish the cleanup. The cleanup took 4 more months. The remaining humans fought from the sewers, from cave systems, from the forests beyond the city. They became ghosts. They struck at night. They poisoned food supplies. They sabotaged equipment. They set traps that killed individual warriors one at a time. It was not efficient. It was not enough to win, but they did it anyway. On day 173, something unprecedented happened. From New Brisbane. The hive mind calculated the mathematics. They had committed 800,000 warriors to take 1 human colony. 696,000 were dead or incapacitated. The remaining humans numbered fewer than 100,000, most wounded, all exhausted. But they could not justify the continued cost. They had lost 87% of their force. They had never taken 87% casualties on any world, ever. The fleet moved toward New Johannesburg instead. Perhaps that colony would be easier. They deployed the same number of warriors, expecting similar resistance but planning to adapt more quickly. New Johannesburg lasted 7 months. The humans there had watched New Brisbane's battle and learned from it. They refined the tactics. They prepared better defenses. They taught every civilian how to build explosives from household materials. New Shanghai held for 9 months. The Confederation Council watched in stunned silence as the reports came in. 3 human colonies had held off long enough for Confederation forces to regroup and mount a proper counteroffensive. By the time warriors arrived to reinforce the Terran sector, they were already retreating. They had lost 3/4 of their invasion force trying to take 3 Tier 4 worlds. "Get me President," the council chair ordered. The communication established appeared on screen. She looked like she had aged 20 years. Her hair was completely white. Scars marked her face. She had been on New Brisbane personally, fighting alongside her people. "President," the council chair began, "the Confederation owes humanity an enormous debt. Your species held the line when our strongest warriors fell. You bought us time to organize a proper defense. You saved countless lives across dozens of systems." Stared at the council chair with hollow eyes. "You abandoned us," she said flatly. "You left us to die." "We made a strategic error in judgment," the chair admitted. "We did not understand your capabilities. We wish to make amends. The Confederation is prepared to offer." 8 million dead, interrupted. 12 million of us on those colonies. 8 million dead. 4 million survivors, and most of them will never be the same. She leaned forward. "You want to make amends, then fix your assessment, because you did not make a strategic error. You made a fundamental mistake about what we are." Ambassador requested permission to return to Earth. The Council granted it immediately. Someone needed to understand what had happened. Someone needed to figure out how the threat assessment had failed so catastrophically. Arrived on Earth 6 weeks after the from human space. The ambassador met with military commanders, psychologists, historians, and survivors from all 3 colonies. Every interview added another piece to a puzzle that should not have existed. "We did not have a choice," one survivor said. "She had lost her left arm on New Brisbane. We could run or we could fight. Running just meant dying slower." "But you kept fighting even when victory was impossible," pressed. "They were stronger, more numerous, better equipped. Rational analysis suggested immediate surrender would minimize casualties." The woman laughed bitterly. "You don't understand humans at all, do you? We're spite in biological form. Tell us we can't do something, and we'll kill ourselves trying just to prove you wrong." Another interview, this time with a military commander who had coordinated the defense of New Shanghai. "The fight like a machine," he explained. "Perfect coordination, maximum efficiency. That is their strength and their weakness. They process information centrally and adapt systematically. But we adapt individually. Every soldier, every squad, every damn civilian with a homemade bomb was making their own decisions. They were fighting one enemy with 1 million different brains. They could not predict us because we could not predict ourselves." Interviewed a doctor who had worked in the emergency bunkers under New Brisbane. "I had patients with injuries that should have been immediately fatal," she said. "Penetrating chest wounds, severe blood loss, massive tissue damage. They should have gone into shock and died, but they kept asking when they could return to the fight. I had to sedate people to keep them from tearing their stitches and going back to the front lines. Their bodies were failing, but their minds refused to accept it." A historian provided context. "Ambassador, do you know what a persistence hunter is? Our ancestors hunted prey not by being faster or stronger, but by simply following it until it collapsed from exhaustion. We would track an antelope for days, never letting it rest, never letting it recover, just maintaining steady pressure until its body gave out. We evolved to do that. We evolved to just keep going. That trait never went away. We applied it to everything. We do not have higher peaks than other species. We just never stop climbing." Began to understand. The threat assessment matrix measured species at their maximum capacity. It tested physical limits, technological capabilities, strategic thinking at optimal performance. But humans at their maximum capacity were not particularly impressive. Their strength was not in their peaks. It was in their refusal to accept valleys. The ambassador requested psychological evaluations from before and during the conflict. The data was revealing. Humans at peace showed normal stress responses, reasonable risk assessment, and logical decision-making. Humans under pressure showed increasingly abnormal psychological profiles. They developed tunnel vision that ignored pain and exhaustion. They bonded with their groups so intensely that individual survival became secondary to group success. They fixated on goals with what medical professionals called pathological determination. "We flagged this in the original assessment," said to the human psychologist reviewing the data. We noted that humans maintain aggression and focus beyond what should be physiologically possible. We called it a flaw, a species that does not know when to quit. And now you understand why we survived our own evolution, the psychologist replied. We were not the strongest predators on our planet. We were not the fastest. We were the ones who refused to give up. Every other predator knew when to stop hunting. We did not. That made us dangerous. Spent 3 months compiling a new report. The data was extensive, the conclusions troubling. The ambassador presented findings to the Confederation Council in a closed session. The original threat assessment was not technically incorrect, began. Humans are physically fragile. Their technology is adequate but not exceptional. Their strategic thinking is competent but not superior. All of those measurements were accurate, but we measured them wrong. The council chair gestured for to continue. We measured humans at rest and assumed that represented their standard capability. This was our error. Humans at rest are not at their standard. They are at their minimum. Humans under pressure become something different. They do not have a maximum threshold. They have a baseline, and then they have levels of intensity that increase with opposition. Displayed comparative data. The warriors are rated 9.1. They are incredibly capable, but they have a limit. Push them past that limit and they break. They are rated 8.7. Same situation. Every species we have assessed has a measurable maximum capacity. Humans do not. Or rather, their maximum is defined by what they are opposing. They escalate to match the threat. That seems improbable, a council member objected. There must be physiological limits. There are, agreed. Humans die, but they die still trying. We witnessed human soldiers with fatal wounds complete their missions before expiring. We documented humans fighting at 47% efficiency when they should have been at 0%. Their bodies fail, but their determination does not. The ambassador pulled up footage from New Brisbane. It showed a human soldier with a penetrating abdominal wound dragging herself across rubble. She reached a detonator, triggered an explosive that collapsed a supply tunnel, and then died. The entire sequence took 4 minutes. Medical analysis suggested she should have been unconscious within 30 seconds of receiving that injury. The original assessment noted that humans have poor survival instincts. They risk death for abstract concepts like honor and duty. We marked this as irrational behavior. We were measuring it backward. What we called poor survival instinct is actually their most dangerous trait. They will accept death as a cost of achieving their goal. Most species will not. Most species have survival as their primary drive. Humans have it as a secondary drive. The council chamber was silent, continued. I propose we create a new category in the threat assessment matrix. We currently measure peak capability. I suggest we add a sustained threat coefficient. This would measure not what a species can do at their best, but what they continue doing when everyone else has stopped. How long they persist. How much they escalate. How thoroughly they refuse to quit. And humanity's rating on this new scale, the council chair asked. Displayed the calculation. 9.7 out of 10, possibly higher. Our data is limited because we have never seen them truly push to their absolute limit. They lost 8 million people defending 3 colonies and still maintained organized resistance. I do not know what it would take to break them completely. I am not certain they can be broken. The council debated for hours. Some members argued that the original assessment should stand, that peak capability was what mattered. Others pointed out that the had proved peak capability was not enough. Sustained threat was clearly a factor that needed consideration. Finally, the council chair called for a vote. The measure passed. The threat assessment matrix would be updated to include sustained threat coefficient as a primary category. Humanity would be reclassified from Resource Tier 4 to Defense Tier 1. President received the notification personally. She met with in the same office where they had first discussed humanity's place in the Confederation 10 years earlier. Defense Tier 1, said, reading the document. "That means you want us in your military structure now. The Confederation would like to request human military advisors across multiple systems." Confirmed. "Your tactics and strategic approaches have applications we had not considered. We also wish to formally apologize for our initial assessment and our failure to defend your colonies." Set down the document. "Your apology is noted, but I need you to understand something, Ambassador. We did not fight to prove ourselves to you. We fought because they were killing our people and we could not accept that. Your opinion of us did not matter. It still does not matter." "I understand," said quietly. "I don't think you do," stood and walked to the window. "You measured us and found us weak. Fine. That hurt, but we accepted it. You abandoned us when we needed help. That hurt worse. But the worst part is that you think this changes anything. You think now that you've updated your assessment, now that you've recalculated our threat rating, you understand us. Do we not? Turn back. You understand what we did. You don't understand why. You see the determination, the refusal to quit, the willingness to die for our goals. But you think those are just traits, just characteristics to be measured and filed. You're still treating us like a data point." "I am trying to understand," said, "truly, what am I missing?" "We are not special because we are strong," said. "We are special because we remember what it felt like to be weak. Every human who fought on those colonies remembered being dismissed, being told we were not worth defending. And we fought anyway. Not for revenge. Not to prove you wrong. We fought because we know what it means to be abandoned, and we decided we would never abandon each other." She returned to her desk and pulled up a star map. 3 human colonies glowed on the display. "We're accepting your offer. We'll provide military advisors. We'll work with the Confederation defense structure, but we're also doing something else." Marked several systems on the map. They were on the Confederation borders, home to small, relatively weak species. "We're establishing permanent defense stations here, and here, and here. Not defending our interests, defending theirs, the species who would be written off if another threat emerges, the ones who would be abandoned because they are not strategically valuable. That will require enormous resources," observed. "The return on investment." "There is no return on investment," interrupted. "That is the point. We are defending them because they need defending, because we remember what it feels like to need defending and be told no. Because we decided that if we survive long enough to have power in this galaxy, we will use it to make sure no one else gets left behind." Studied the human president for a long moment. "Your species continues to surprise me." "Good," said. "Keep being surprised. Maybe eventually you'll understand that we are not what you measure. We are what we choose to do when no one is measuring us at all." The meeting concluded. Filed a final addendum to the assessment report. It was brief. "Recommend any species encountering humans in the future understand this fundamental truth. They do not fight because they are strong. They fight because they refuse to be weak. They do not win because they are superior. They win because they do not stop. And they do not stop because stopping would mean accepting defeat, and humans do not know how to do that. If you cannot defeat them immediately and completely, you have already lost. They will simply continue until you cannot." The Confederation formally apologized to humanity in a public ceremony. They offered reparations for the 8 million dead. They granted humans defense Tier 1 status and voting rights on the Security Council. They requested military advisors and tactical consultants. Humanity accepted the apology and the new status. They sent advisors to 17 different systems. They shared their tactics and their strategic approaches. Other species studied human endurance training and psychological conditioning. The phrase, "sustained threat doctrine," entered Confederation military vocabulary. But the most lasting change was not in military structure or threat assessments. It was in the fleet that appeared on the borders of weak species territories. Human warships, painted with the emblem of New Brisbane. The fleet that had no strategic value and protected no human interests. The fleet that existed solely to make sure that when the next threat emerged, when the next crisis hit, no species would be told they were not worth defending. Visited one of those defense stations 5 years later. The ambassador met with the human commander, a veteran of New Shanghai who walked with a limp and had burn scars covering half her face. "Why are you here?" asked. "This system has nothing humanity needs. The species here cannot repay you. There is no strategic advantage to this position." The commander smiled. It was not a happy expression, but it was genuine. "We're here because we remember being rated 2.3 out of 10. We remember being told we were not worth defending. We remember what it felt like when the Kame and the Confederation left us to die." She looked out at the stars. "We survived that. 8 million of us did not. The ones who did survive made a promise. We promised that no species would ever feel what we felt. We promised that power means protecting the weak, not abandoning them. That is not efficient," observed. "It is not logical. It does not maximize your resources or advance your interests." "No," the commander agreed. "It does not, but we are not here to be efficient. We are here because it is right. You measured us and found us weak. You measured us again and found us strong, but you still do not understand us. We are not what we can do. We are what we choose to do, and we choose this." Left the station with a final thought recorded in the personal log. "I have spent 3,000 cycles assessing species and their capabilities.